"You don't need the house anymore, Dad. It'll be mine soon enough." Those were the exact words my daughter, Emily, said to me one evening as we sat at my worn oak kitchen table in Springfield, Illinois. She didn't say it with love or humor. It was cold, sharp, and full of entitlement. The same house where I had raised her, patched every roof leak with my own hands, and worked 2 jobs just to keep the mortgage paid. I stared at her, the steam from my black coffee curling between us, wondering if I had misheard. But she leaned back in her chair, folded her arms, and smirked, as if the matter was already settled. Before I continue, if you're new here, please like, comment, and subscribe, and tell us where you're watching from. Now, let me give you some backstory. My name is Robert Whitaker. I'm 67 years old, retired from the Union Pacific Railroad where I worked for over 30 years as a conductor. I bought this 2-story brick house back in 1989. Interest rates weren't kind then, but I worked overtime, hauled freight across states, and saved every dime to keep up with payments. This house wasn't just lumber and nails. It was proof of everything I sacrificed. I raised Emily here. Birthday parties in the backyard, prom pictures on the front porch, late-night talks in the living room when she was a teenager. After my wife, Linda, passed from breast cancer in 2007, it was just Emily and me. She was my whole world. Or at least, I thought I was hers. But somewhere along the way, things changed. Emily went off to college in Chicago, married a man named Greg, and came back. Different. More polished, more ambitious, but colder too. Greg worked in real estate, always talking about investments and assets. I should have noticed then. The way they'd look at my house like it was some untapped opportunity instead of the home I bled for. That night at my kitchen table, Emily went further. Greg and I already talked about how we'll renovate it once it's ours. Tear down those old walls, maybe flip it for a bigger place in Chicago. "Dad, you'll be better off in assisted living anyway." I felt my stomach knot. Assisted living? I was still mowing my own lawn, fixing my own gutters, shoveling snow every winter. I wasn't helpless, but to her, I was already a relic, just waiting to step aside so she and Greg could cash in on the only thing I had left of my life's work. I didn't say much that night, just nodded, let her talk, while inside me something began to stir. Not anger, not yet. Just a quiet realization that my daughter no longer saw me as her father. She saw me as an obstacle. But what she didn't know was that this house wasn't hers to claim. Not yet, and maybe not ever, because I had already begun thinking of a plan. The following Sunday, Emily and Greg showed up at my house unannounced. I was out back, cleaning the gutters, when I saw Greg's shiny black SUV pull into the driveway. He stepped out in his tailored jacket, looking out of place in my working-class neighborhood, while Emily followed behind with a folder tucked under her arm. "Dad," she called, her voice unusually bright. "Can we come in for a minute?" I wiped my hands on an old rag and nodded, even though my gut already told me this wasn't a social visit. Inside, the smell of Sunday chili still lingered from lunch. I sat at the table, same one Emily had smirked at me across days before, while Greg leaned against the counter like he owned the place. Emily slid the folder across the table. "We just want you to look over a few papers. Nothing complicated. It'll make things easier when the time comes." I opened it and felt my chest tighten. Quitclaim deeds. Legal documents transferring the house into Emily and Greg's names. Not after I passed. Now. While I was still sitting there, breathing, I closed the folder slowly. "What is this?" I asked, keeping my voice even. Greg smiled, the kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. "It's just smart planning, Robert. If you transfer the house now, we can save on probate costs later. You won't have to worry about a thing." "We'll take care of everything," Emily chimed in quickly. "Dad, it's for your own good. This way, if something happens, Greg and I can act right away. You won't have to stress about bills or upkeep. You've done enough." It's time to let us handle things. Her words were honeyed, but I could feel the steel underneath. They weren't asking. They were pushing. I looked at Emily hard. So you want me to sign away the house while I'm still alive? Just hand it over? She shifted in her seat, her face tightening. Don't make it sound like that. We're family. We're just preparing for the future. Greg added, You can still live here, Robert. Nothing changes, for now. But legally, it makes sense to put it in our names. I leaned back, letting the silence hang. My coffee pot hissed in the background, the faint ticking of the old wall clock marking the moment. Finally, I said, I'll think about it. Emily looked frustrated, but Greg gave her a subtle nudge, and they packed up. That night, I sat in my recliner staring at the folder they had left behind. My mind kept replaying Linda's voice, the way she used to say, This house is our legacy. Rob, don't ever let anyone take it away from you. But my own daughter, the little girl I had carried on my shoulders to watch fireworks every 4th of July, was trying to do exactly that. The next few days, their pressure mounted. Emily called every evening. Dad, did you look at the papers? We really need to get this moving. Greg even stopped by my workplace at the VFW hall, hinting loudly to my buddies about estate planning and responsible families. It was humiliating. My own friends looked at me with pity. One even said, Bob, don't let them strong-arm you. You've earned that place. I realized then that this wasn't just about property. This was about dignity, about respect. And if I caved, I'd lose both. I didn't tell Emily or Greg, but I started making quiet moves of my own. I called an old friend, Hank Miller, who ran a real estate office in town. I asked him, Hank, what would happen if I wanted to sell my place? Hypothetically, Hank chuckled. Hypothetically, I could have buyers lined up within a week. Market's hot right now, Bob. But why? You looking to move? I paused. Let's just say I'm considering my options. That night, I slept better than I had in weeks, because if Emily thought she was going to inherit my house without lifting a finger, she was in for a surprise. But before I could put my plan into motion, something happened that pushed me over the edge. Something public. Something humiliating. That made me realize I couldn't wait any longer. The breaking point came at O'Malley's Diner, a small brick joint on the corner of Jefferson Street where everyone in Springfield seemed to gather for Sunday breakfast. The place smelled of bacon grease and fresh coffee, with the sound of forks clinking against plates and the jukebox playing old Johnny Cash songs in the background. I'd gone in early, like I usually did, to sit at the counter and read the paper. But that morning, Emily and Greg walked in with a couple of their friends. Instead of sitting in a booth, they came right up to me, loud enough for the whole room to hear. Dad, Emily said, dropping her purse on the counter. Have you signed those papers yet? We need to move forward. I felt every eye in the diner shift toward me. Greg slid in beside her, grinning like a salesman at a county fair. Robert, you're just holding things up. Look, buddy, the house is too much for you. You should be enjoying retirement, not worrying about property taxes and busted pipes. Emily laughed, but it wasn't kind. Yeah, Dad, let us handle it. Honestly, it's silly that you're dragging this out. You don't need that house. You'll be in a retirement home in a few years anyway. The room went quiet. Even Old Man Johnson, who usually never shut up about fishing, stopped mid-bite. I could feel the humiliation creeping up my neck, burning hot. My own daughter, reducing me to some burden, some obstacle in front of half the town. I set down my coffee cup slowly and looked at her. Emily, I said, calm but firm, this isn't the time or the place. But she pushed harder. No, Dad, it is. People need to see how stubborn you're being. You're making this harder than it has to be. Just sign the papers so Greg and I can take care of everything. A murmur spread through the diner. Folks shifted uncomfortably in their seats, whispering. I caught Hank Miller's eyes from across the room, my real estate friend. He raised an eyebrow, almost like he was saying, You gonna take that, Bob? Greg leaned in, his voice low but still audible. "Robert, let's not make this ugly. You're lucky we even want to take the place. Most people wouldn't bother with a house this old." That was it, the final straw. I stood up, folded my newspaper, and laid a $5 bill on the counter for my coffee. I looked around the diner, letting the silence hang, making sure everyone heard what I said next. "You think this house is yours already. You think I'm just going to hand over 30 years of my sweat and sacrifice. But let me tell you something. Nothing in this world is yours until it's signed, sealed, and paid for. And last I checked, that house belongs to me. Not you. Not him. Me." Emily's face flushed crimson. Greg opened his mouth, but I didn't give him the chance. I walked out of O'Malley's, the cold morning air hitting me like a slap, but in the best way possible. Because in that moment, my decision was made. That afternoon, I called Hank. "Put the house on the market, quietly. Don't say a word to Emily or Greg. I want it gone before they even know what happened." Hank whistled. "You serious, Bob?" "Dead serious. I knew it would be messy. I knew Emily would be furious. But I also knew this. Better to sell my house to strangers who respected its value than to my own daughter who only saw dollar signs." And within days, the first buyers started showing up. Couples, young families, even a retired teacher who said she loved the old brickwork. People who saw more than just profit. But while I was making moves, Emily was making her own. And the stunt she pulled next nearly blew everything wide open. I should have known Emily wouldn't back off quietly. A week after the diner humiliation, I was in the middle of showing the house to a young couple when I saw Greg's SUV pull into the driveway. He stepped out, slick as ever, holding a manila folder under his arm. And right behind him was Emily, looking like she had rehearsed a performance. "Dad!" she called out, too loudly. "We need to talk, now!" The couple glanced at each other awkwardly, clearly sensing the tension. I excused myself, walked down the porch steps, and met them halfway. Greg flashed that salesman's grin. "Robert, this is Alan Stevens. He's an attorney we've been consulting. We think it's time to make things official." A short man in a pinstripe suit stepped forward, holding out a hand I didn't take. "Mr. Whitaker, your daughter has legitimate interest in your estate. By transferring the property to her now, you avoid complications down the line. I strongly advise you to reconsider before making any rash decisions." My blood boiled. So this is what it's come to? Lawyers at my front door while I'm still alive and kicking? Emily crossed her arms. "Dad, don't be dramatic. We're just trying to protect what's ours." "What's yours?" I barked. "You didn't pay a dime on this mortgage. You never replaced a roof shingle. Never scraped ice off the sidewalk at 5 in the morning before work. And you have the nerve to stand here and say it's yours." The young couple on the porch, bless them, were still listening. The husband cleared his throat. "Sir, we'll, come back another time." They slipped away quickly, leaving me face to face with my daughter, her husband, and their hired gun. Greg leaned closer, lowering his voice so only I could hear. "You can fight us if you want, Robert. But the longer you drag this out, the uglier it'll get. People will start saying you're senile, unfit to manage property. Is that how you want to go out?" That was the moment something inside me hardened. They weren't just greedy. They were willing to smear my name, destroy my reputation, all to get their hands on a house. I stepped back and pointed toward the street. "Get off my property, all of you." Emily's face twisted with anger. "You'll regret this, Dad. We're not giving up." I didn't flinch. Neither am I. They left in a huff, tires squealing as Greg's SUV roared away. But the damage was done. The potential buyers had seen the drama. The listing felt like it was slipping through my fingers. That night, I sat in my recliner staring at Linda's old photo on the mantel. I whispered, "Don't worry, honey. They're not going to win." The next morning, I called Hank and told him to move faster. "No more quiet listings. Put it on the market, public. I want offers by the end of the week." Hank whistled. That'll rattle some cages. Good, I said, and rattle it did. By Thursday, I had 3 serious offers, and the paperwork was nearly finalized. But Emily found out. Oh, she found out. And what she did at the next family gathering turned the whole town against her in ways she never expected. The showdown came at my sister's house during Sunday dinner. Family dinners were a Whitaker tradition. Pot roast, mashed potatoes, laughter echoing in the dining room. But that evening, the air was different. Emily had arranged to be there, and she didn't come empty-handed. Halfway through the meal, just as my nephew was passing the rolls, Emily slammed a stack of papers on the table. The sound made everyone jump. "Dad's being stubborn," she announced, her voice carrying over the clatter of silverware. "He refuses to sign the house over to me and Greg, even though it's the responsible thing to do. He's endangering our family's future because he won't admit he can't handle it anymore." The table went silent. My sister's face turned red with shock. My nephew muttered, "Geez." I sat there, cutting my roast slowly, making her wait for my reply. I could feel every pair of eyes on me, waiting to see how I'd respond. Greg jumped in, playing his part. "Look, folks, Robert's a great man, but he's 70 now. The house is too much. Taxes, upkeep. It's only fair that Emily and I step in. Otherwise, the place could fall into disrepair." Emily added sharply, "If Dad won't do the right thing, maybe the court should decide if he's even capable of managing his own property." That last line was their mistake. Gasps circled the table. My sister put down her fork. Are you saying your father's incompetent? That he can't handle his own life?" Emily hesitated but doubled down. "If he won't sign, what other choice do we have?" That's when I stood. My chair scraped against the floor, and I laid my napkin on the table with deliberate calm. "You want to talk about responsibility?" I said, my voice steady. "Let's talk. I worked 30 years on the railroad to pay for that house. Your mother and I scrimped and saved. Every dollar of equity, every brick in those walls, was bought with sacrifice. And you sit here, my own daughter, saying I'm unfit? That I should be pushed aside like some broken-down old mule?" I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out a folder, the same kind they had tried to use against me. But this time, it was mine. I laid it on the table and flipped it open. Funny thing is, while you were plotting behind my back, I was signing papers too, but not the ones you wanted. I looked straight at Emily and Greg. "I sold the house last week. The sale closed Friday. The money's already in my account." The color drained from Emily's face. Greg sat up straight, his mouth opening but no words coming out. The entire table erupted in whispers and shock. My sister's eyes widened. You sold it?" I nodded. "To a nice couple with 2 little kids. They loved the backyard, said they could see their children growing up there. They saw it as a home, not a payday." Emily slammed her hand on the table. "You can't do this. That was supposed to be mine?" I met her eyes, unflinching. "No, Emily, it was never yours. It was mine, and I chose to give it to people who respect it. You wanted the money. You wanted control. But you forgot one thing. I'm still here, and I won't be treated like I'm already gone." The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, my nephew muttered under his breath, "Good for you, Uncle Bob." A few others nodded in agreement. The tide of the room turned, and for the first time in years, Emily didn't have the upper hand. Greg's jaw tightened. He leaned toward her, whispering something I couldn't hear. But it didn't matter. Their scheme was dead. Their greed had been exposed in front of the entire family. I sat back down, picked up my fork, and cut into my roast like nothing had happened. Around me, the conversation slowly picked back up. But the looks Emily and Greg got told me everything. Their reputation had taken a blow they'd never recover from. And for me, I felt lighter than I had in years, because sometimes the best revenge isn't leaving your enemies empty-handed. It's making sure the whole world sees them for what they truly are. Tell us your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories.